Okay, so let's first start with the Deputy Director of NIH. We are all thrilled to help you. I just want to say a word about NIH because we haven't had the privilege. We're not privileged people, we haven't had the privilege to be thrilled to help you. So I want to say a word about NIH because we haven't had the privilege of having you with us, before us, and just amongst us, and sort of set the context and the tone for this remarkable institution, supported by your administration and the largest supporter of biomedical research in the whole world, the National Institute of Health. How we distribute most of our funds is unknown to the whole world. So we want to talk about this more than 80% of all the people in the world. We are the institutions all over the country, and we hear about this breakthrough in medical research that happened at the University of Illinois or Florida, I can't remember. It was probably supported by NIH, and we use most rigorous peer review systems in the world to decide what we're going to find and what we do, everything from the fundamental to the clinical research and trials and the everything in between. You could say we do Alzheimer's to Zika, or A to Z, or some version of fact that we also support infrastructure that makes it possible at a time like this to be able to move rapidly in terms of developing vaccines. And you'll hear more about that from the doctor about the consequence of NIH. So research, and you could measure various ways of extension, longevity reduction, and deaths. From heart attacks down to 70% of what they used to be. Strollers, likewise, cancer rates of death dropping about 1 or 2% a year. HIV, which used to be a death sentence, now compatible, long survival cystic. Cystic fibrosis is a disease. It used to be able to get kinds of lives for 8 or 10 years, but now it's down to 3 months announcement of a drug therapy. That makes a lot of these individuals planning of retirement in Mykonos, Greece, and the economics of travel that can be helping heal the wounds of the government best investments, because the return of investment, every dollar that the NIH spends, is about $8.38. Because all of the other economic activity that is expired, but a major component of NIH, it's only about 11% of the budget. It's an innumerable program that's now on campus, more than 500 Thunder, Lightning, and 5,000 MDS PhDs and MVP HDS work here on a wide variety of things. A few hundred yards from here is the largest research hospital in the world, the NIH Clinical Center. Among their achievements, the first chemotherapy for leukemia, the development of AZT for HIV cancer, immunotherapy. Now, say lives include people who thought that they were no hope for them, and they were being just helped by the dramatic advances in treating depression, lithium. It was invented here, ketamine. Now turning to be a really exciting development for people with resistant depression for the first genre and GAN and the Magoons of therapy for humans done here at NIH. So now everything evolving to the point where we are curing of this Campbell Soup campus. People are sickle-dickle cell disease with gene therapy and course vaccines. Vaccines developed here about the childhood meningitis for HPV and Ebola. And now we're going to talk about the coronavirus, of course. So these are the reasons people call us the National Institute of Hope. And we're people to establish help and friendships all over the world, all over the globe, to embrace the particular description that you have next to be the probability most highly regarded infectious disease expert in the country. I might even say that Mr. Donald Trump Fauci has been graced by the presence of so many decades, and he's existently exactly the right person to tell you what we're doing right now about the coronavirus and how we're going to address the need for a vaccine in order to tackle this really difficult problem. Now, thank you so much for being here, and it's helpful for me to just and I want to connect with what we've been talking about in the past few weeks, so I could just get the facility that slides here. Remember, when you mentioned that the fastest form of time you get through the pathogen, you know that it's no time for the phase 1 trial safety that has happened to the SARS in 2003 from the time we got the virus. And we did no time first phase 1 trial. Remember, this doesn't mean of the vaccine, it means for safety. That was 20 months, then H5N1. Down to 11 H1N1 influenza and the Zika virus, and we now believe I've told you several times it's 2 to 3 months. I think it's better, it's so kind of thing that we're placing in a SWAT team and going to respond to emergency microbes. So building an entire center was first started as a response to making a vaccine for HIV, but the crew that was brought together and bought together was the best of the best from all over the country, Doctor. Janice Skull and the director of this place, we do everything for fundamental basic science to the clinical trials. We mean, it's some pride, but it's some sort of honesty that we're not a lot of questioning of things, that we need to group up and do what they want to do with the time and the challenge of the time. So challenging Ebola can be challenging, but anything we always turn them to do about coronavirus really is something. We feel that we are proud, and we think the nation should be. Know that these are the kind of things that are available. They're available to John, and they're available to Mr. President and Mr. Secretary. Thank you. Our Vaccine Research Center looks forward to a brief tour upstairs. Here you can drive through Dr. Corbin, Dr. Graham, and I tell you about the working on the coronavirus vaccine, just good enough to compare the comparison, because we always talked about the Tsar, the Russian president, talking about mirroring the things and having an influence on the vote. So the slide is just going to the next slide, and the article is writing a little bit ahead and a little bit more about coronavirus infections. It's a common cold research, and that's recently coma and the karma, and the mild think that they would just come and call next slide. And we're different kinds of viruses. One's on Eve and one on the red circle around them, the 4 viruses of the cause of the common cold. This was until 2002 that we got a big surprise, and the surprise was next to that of none. Severe acute respiratory syndrome, and that was SARS. Yes, lady got in the Middle East respiratory syndrome. And but that story about the lungs, remembering next slide to China, Guangdong province. And the sort of history pizza, soda, the president of China, and we got Guangdong start disease. That came up nobody knew, and the Chinese didn't really tell anybody about it a few times. A few months in November, they got to Hong Kong, and then Hong Kong, next slide is a hotel in Hong Kong. This is back in 2003. Someone from China went to the hotel, infected a bunch of people. Next slide, and this is what you had, 8 flights going from the time that you made any restrictions to the way that he thought. The thinking was saved by literally a lot of hurting. Next slide, and this is what happened there in 2004, and 8,000 cases, 774 deaths, and now you get the numbers. You get the telling you that that's mortality of SARS, and that's about 9 to 10% of what you map there. Next slide, and one to the mosque conventions, which were the Saudi Arabia of the animal reserve. So bad, the next thing to the bat and the camel and the people in the Middle East who got the infection from the monkeys, kind of things the animal reserve, and the reserving for nothing other than Chelsea sometimes adapts itself to function very, very, very efficiently next to nobody. Happened. We had a lot of mares, coronavirus in Saudi Arabia, and we had a lot of cases in the United States, but many finally this next week. We're right now with the coronavirus. And we're just getting back to the last sequence about the Chinese being able to put on board in the next album, and the things that have been therapeutic vaccines to stop where we are. Some of the comments from you, Mr. President, well, we want to thank you, all incredible, and I've heard about you, and you all know my name, and I've got to meet you. Unfortunately, I'll meet you because I'm talking about this. We've made tremendous progress. I know you're dealing with other nations to help them out because they're really lost and very badly, and we're talking to them also, making decisions as to whatever, and allowing them to travel. They're traveling, and they're being pretty severe in these restrictions, but I guess the right thing to do was being severe. NIH, it's the home of the ministry. So the factories are generating doctors, and hearing a lot of hurting by the Uncle John Trump, a big fan of what you've done. So it started an incredible situation, and the scientists and researchers all over the world saying that this is the best. And you think the world is extremely happy, and you're involved, Tony. Your reputation is second to none. And I think we agree with you that John is right here, and he has no choice but to fact this into the case of the worst. Lucky have I see you, President over the hill. Just leaving now, and I told him to stay there and finish up what we're doing in terms of getting the funding we need that is necessary for the Siri funding. And I have the 4X and more than X, and I'm concerned that this is the case of Francis, the great saint that just thank you everybody at NIH, the greatest scientists and doctors and everything. You know, you're working around the flock, and I know you've made a lot of green fields are ready to boom, and it makes a very good feel for meeting us yings and come tea a law altern a boot company. That's a company that has Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, obviously, some kind of great companies. You're very positive about the outcome of the therapies, the therapeuticals, and many big things, because I'm guessing the therapies are about the conflicts that happen fast in the vaccine, and certainly the result can happen a lot faster if we're looking at some good answers. And I just want to thank you so much, Tony. We're going to appreciate the John, thank you, many fantastic thank yous about the things that shake hands, and I don't see them every day. That's a job appreciation. That's making decisions on certain parts of those countries that you know already made a decision on parts of those countries. Italy, Japan, for example. Unfortunate, because that's an incredible job. They did the Olympics, as you know, and they've been building a facility that is really finished and it's beautiful. Right on, beautiful with the Chinese, Japanese, and the Prime Minister of Japan, Modi. You know the magnificent facility that they're going to build, but they're right deciding if it's necessary to go with the further restrictions of Mr. President, looking at different areas of those professionals making early decisions based on the line with China blamed us through the decision, and they're fully understanding the reasoning about that, but it's a hard decision, making progress in the difficulties that they're facing with the decisions, making additional decisions that arise every moment, every single cycle strongly. We're not seeing a lot of evidence in that area closing, and I guess automatically because we have a very strong border. We now have a very strong border, all about 129 miles of wall, and that the wall area is 100% secure. We haven't seen any great evidence of the grass. And the problems are that Bone and the bongs are at this moment anybody's noticing that it's Tuesday and you're watching the primaries that are take place, and interesting evidence about the television that's gone races and didn't see the Biden coming up with Bernie. And they're trying to take it away from him. He doesn't know that it's fair, and I know it's politics, down to what is fair, and it's going to be very interesting evening on television because it's time difference, California time difference, New York. Accustomed to the right thing and watching who would do when abandoned, going to work really early. Done, great job. We have the strongest economy on earth, and we're going to go up as China did. The economy that has been hurting very badly for a long time, but now people understand that it's the People's Republic of China, and whoever takes them on was anything else. That's the reaction of the North Korea launch, the missiles, and the yesterday dinner reaction, missiles, and no Afghanistan in the picture. It's a conversation about the conservation of the Taliban and the Tibet. It's the Taliban today, and we're going to look ahead and end this with a looking great and common interest that are finding our country itself, and it's finding the 20 presidents have tried to be blocking the relationship in a very good place with Mulan.